Welcome back to another class on Gemara Journey with Rashi. We are continuing today by Ezrat Hashem in Daf Bet Amud Bet. This will be part 7 of the Shi'ur. I want to speak about today a question which was bothering me over Shabbat. After I had recorded the previous class, it bothered me very much. How did the Baraita answer the Chachamim's question regarding Uba Hashemesh V'Taher? Now, let me explain what I mean. If you remember, we spoke about Uba Hashemesh V'Taher. What does it mean? Does Uba Hashemesh V'Taher mean that it's going on sunset, and V'Taher is going on the day passing? Or does Uba Hashemesh mean it's going on sunrise? V'Taher means it's going Tahir Gavra, that the person became purified by bringing the Korbanot. So therefore, you're not going to have any proof to me that Korbanot hold back a person, meaning a Kohen, from eating Truma, and the sunset doesn't hold him back. You don't have no proof. Because maybe really, if I learn about Hashem's V'Taher, it's going on the sunrise and it's going on the person, maybe I can really learn that the Korbanot do hold a person back from eating Truma, meaning the Kohen, of course. So we had a whole thing, we had a machloket, we had an argument between Rabba Bar Rav Shila and the Chachamim in the West. Rabba Bar Rav Shila came around and he said, how do I know the word Uba Hashemesh V'Taher means it's on sunset and not on sunrise? How do I know that? Because it doesn't say Uba Hashemesh V'Taher. Because when it says V'Taher, it's like a commandment to the Kohen to go ahead and bring the Korban. Because he's commanded in bringing the Korban. So that's why he should have said Uba Hashemesh V'Taher, as showing me that a Kohen is obligated to go ahead and do something. But it doesn't use that language, it says V'Taher. So comes Rabbi Baruch Shila and he says, if it says Uba Hashemesh V'Taher and not V'Taher, it must be it's going on the sun setting. That's the way he wanted to learn that Uba Hashemesh V'Taher is going on the sun setting. Came the Chachamim in the West and they said, the Rabbi Baruch Shila, Lo Shemilahu. We didn't hear this teaching of Rabbi Baruch Shila. So what did the Chachamim of the West do? They asked the question themselves. Does Uba Hashemesh V'Taher mean the sun setting? Or does Uba Hashemesh V'Taher mean the sun rising? They asked the question, the Gemara says, and then they answered their own question. How? Let me read for you the language. Midikatani b'Baraita, because it was taught in the Baraita. Siman l'davar tzedek kochavim. Right? Because we'll see Bilineder later on. It says, Me'matay matchalin likrot Kri Shema ba'arvit. From when does one begin to recite Kri Shema in the evening? The Chachamim omrim, Mesha'ah she'kohanim zeka'in l'chol b'trumatan. When the Kohanim are allowed to eat their truma. Siman l'davar tzedek kochavim. A hint to that is tzedek kochavim. Now, from there, it answers our question that Uba Hashemesh V'Taher means sun setting and not sun rising. Wait a minute, I asked myself a question. I said, 1 second. Something doesn't make sense over here. I don't get it. Didn't we learn in the Mishnah, Me'motai korin l'shema be'aravin meshash ha'kohanim nechletil l'chol b'trumatan? From when does one begin the Shema in the evening? From the time the Kohanim enter to eat their Truma. Rashi says, Kohanim shenitmu'u v'tavlu ve'iru shimshan v'gi itam l'chol b'truma. Kohanim that they became tum and they dipped and the sun set and their time came to eat the Truma. When is that? So we saw in the Gemara, that's clearly Tzedek Kochavim. How do we know? Because the Gemara says on the bottom of the page, 3 quarters down, Amar, the master said, Mesha'ah she'kohanim nechlesil l'chol b'trumatan. From the time the Kohanim entered to eat the Truma, that's when you have to recite the evening Shema. Beautiful. The Gemara asked the question, Michdi, when is that? Kohanim emet ka'ach l'truma. When do the Kohanim eat the Truma? Misha'ah Tzedek Kochavim. From Tzedek Kochavim. Wait! Oh, so the Gemara says, Liti Misha'ah Tzedek Kochavim. Right, so why does it teach Tzedek Kochavim? I wanted to teach you something, by the way. Kohanim emet ka'ach l'truma. Again, when do Kohanim eat the Truma? From Tzedek Kochavim. Oh, if it's from Tzedek Kochavim, what is it coming to teach you? This one is coming to teach you. The kapa'ara lo me'akwa. That the atomic process doesn't hold them back, but the purification process holds them back. Wait a minute, 1 second. I want to get something clear. Want to get it. Over here clearly says, Me'motai matchalin l'krot Kri Shema ba'arvit. From when the Kohanim enter to eat their Truma, it's a hint to the thing is Tzedek Kochavim. Wait a minute. This is a Baraita. Over here is the Mishnah, like we saw on the bottom. When it says, from the time the Kohanim enter to eat their Truma. So I don't understand. This one was bothering me. All Shabbat, Rabotai, you have no idea. All Shabbat it was bothering me. Why is the Gemara using this Baraita where I have a clear Mishnah? Where it says clearly, Memotai Korin Shvabarabim Meshasha Kohanim Nichnesim Lecho Betrumatan. So I thought to myself, maybe, maybe he wanted to bring another source of proof and so on and so forth. But it doesn't make sense. Why? Because, so why in the bottom of the Gemara in Daf Bet Amud Aleph, why does it say in the bottom, Kedetani Uba Hashem Shvitahir, Bia Shimshu Me'akudum Meloch Betruma, Ve'eka Paratom Me'akudum Meloch Betruma. So why did the Gemara say in the bottom, they bring us a proof, like we're talking Braita, that the setting of the sun holds you back from eating truma, but the kapar doesn't hold you back from eating truma. So if everything is good the way we want to learn it, that is really when it sets kochavim, meaning the sun setting is what holds a Kohen from eating truma, but not the korban. So why was with all these questions? Why do I need Rabbi Bar Shila? Why did I need the chachamim in the west? Why do they have to come and give me the Braita? Rabotai, if it sets kochavim, once you bring me that proof and the conversation there, I don't get it. We're dealing with an open Mishnah that says clearly from when does one recite Kriyish Truma in the evening? From the time the Kohanim enter to eat their Truma, which is when that's Kochavim. So why did the Gemara over here with the Chachamim and Rabbi Barashil, he had to tell me it doesn't say V'yitaher. So therefore I have to know it says V'taher, that's what it means sun setting. Chachamim say, no, I have a brighter. What? I don't get it. Where you guys going? I have a clear Mishnah. So the real question, Rabotai, is not on Rabbi Bar Shilo. On him, that's not a question. Why? Because he doesn't want to learn from a Braita. He doesn't want to use the Braita of Tzedek Kochavim. He wants to learn from the word V'taher. Why doesn't it say V'yitaher? If you write that V'yitaher means the next day, it should have said, if you write that Uba Hashem's V'taher means sunrise, it should have said Uba Hashem's V'yitaher as a commandment. It doesn't say it. So Rabbi Bar Shilo actually doesn't give me much of a difficulty. What does give me a difficulty is the Chachamim in the West. When the Chachamim come out and they say that we found a Baraita that's going to come and answer our question, which is Uba Hashem's Retire, which is going on the Tzedek Kochavim, like we saw, right? The Simon Ludav Tzedek Kochavim. That bothered me very much. And tell me, and the Mishnah didn't say Tzedek Kochavim. I'm saying the Mishnah didn't say when the Kohanim entered to the Truma, which is from Tzedek Kochavim. I don't know from over here. Did I even have to bring this whole machloket in the world of the Chachamim? Okay, according to Rabbi Baruch, you can tell me, on him you have no question. Why? Because he doesn't learn it from there. He learns from the word V'taher. But the Chachamim, come on. How do you choose a Baraita over Mishnah? Now you have to remember, what is the difference between a Baraita and Mishnah? It's the same, it's almost the same thing. Baraita literally means outside. Mishnah means, Mishnah is something which was recorded. Baraita it was not recorded, so it was left outside. But if something is recorded, doesn't show me more importance than something which is not recorded. So why would the Chachamim go and answer their question, what does Uba Hashem Shetahir mean, from a Baraita where they could have easily answered it from the Mishnah? I hope you guys get in the question. So Rabotai, this question was bothering me very much. One more time, Rabotai. To understand the answer fully, Rabbi Walk used to teach me you have to get the question good. So I'm going to go over it one more time. Why would the Chachamim bring me a Baraita to show me that the time the Kohanim entered to eat the Truma from Tzedek Kochavim, so from there you bring me a proof, you see clearly that Uba Hashem Shvetahir is going on sun setting, and it's not going on sun rising. Why did you use the Baraita? Why couldn't you just have used the Mishnah itself, where it clearly says Misha Asher Kohanim Nichnasim Lecho Betrumatan, and then the Gemara goes on to elaborate when do the Kohanim enter to eat the Truma at Tzedek Kochavim. So you have an open Mishnah. Why am I using a Baraita? Okay. Rabotai, I was looking for the answer. I looked here, I looked there, believe it or not. I was looking here, there, because the question did bother me. And it was Baruch Hashem B'lein Hari was my son's Shabbat of Bar Mitzvah. Well, my other boys B'lein Hari, Baruch Hashem, it was his Bar Mitzvah. So we were in my parents' house for Shabbat. They made a whole thing. How they do the Bukharins. They gather people. So I'm sitting there the whole time and I'm thinking about this question. Why? And it's bothering. It's just, why would the Chachamim in the West bring the Baraita? Why would the Chachamim in the West bring the Baraita? Now my parents had an art school over there from Masecht Berachot. I tried to go ahead and look it up. They brought a toaster which says that Rashi's question doesn't even begin. They threw me somewhere else completely. There's a lot of Rishonim that say you have to learn this whole Gemara completely different. But I don't want to learn other. I need to understand what did the Chachamim of the West want when they went with the Baraita. So Rabotai, I was thinking about it. I thought maybe this answer, I thought maybe that answer. Then I went and I opened up the Mesifta. I went to the Mesifta and I looked into it. Maybe he's going to bring down something. Rabotai, I was shocked to see this question posed over here in Ot Yud. If you have a Mesifta, Masecht Berachot Daf Bet Amud Bet, on Ot Yud, on the letter Ot Yud, he says over there, on this piece of Gemara, where they say that Simon Ladav says, right, the Chachamim used this Baraita to bring a proof to their words that Ubal Shem Shetahir means sunset and not sunrise. Look what he says. Yesh letmoa. When I saw this, I was very happy. Because you have no idea, Rabotai, when something bothers me, it bothers me. You can't eat, you can't sleep, you can't do things unless you figure out the question. Baruch Hashem, I was able to find it, Rabotai. Yesh letmoa. One can be amazed. Letmoa is like a question, it's like an attack, like you can ask a question, like a very good question. Madua lo pashtu b'nei Eretz Yisrael et sefikatam mimishnatenu el Amud Aleph. Why didn't the Chachamim from Eretz Yisrael answer their doubt from our Mishnah above in Daf Bet Amud Aleph? The Mishnah clearly says, Baneimar, over there it says clearly, Rabotai, Ki korin et shema be'aravit mish'ah she'kohanim nichnasin l'chol b'trumatan. They enter to, right, when does one recite Shema in the evening? From the time the Kohanim enter to eat the Truma. Wait a minute. If you have to recite the Shema from when the Kohanim eat the Truma, what time is when the Kohanim eat the Truma? What period of day is it? That's when the stars come out. Clearly, you know from there. Umuchach, and it's proven. Shoha Kohanim shenitmu'u, the Kohanim that they became Tamil, like Rashi said, Ochlim bitrumatan, od mi be'erev, ve'enam tzrichim lamtim lahava'at kaparatan shel mecharat. He says the Kohanim that became Tamil, they eat their truma while it is still evening, meaning from evening, from when the stars come out, and they don't have to wait till the following day for the kapara. So we see clearly over here, the Chachamim in the West should have used our Mishnah as a proof. Why did they decide to go with the Baraita? You guys see what I'm saying or not? One more time, Rabotai. He says, I'm going to just say it in English. He says, you could ask a question. Why did the Chachamim answer their question of what Ubal Shem Shetahir means? Why did they answer with the Baraita where they could have easily answered from our Mishnah, where it clearly says, from when does one enter to recite the Shema in the evening? From when the Kohanim enter to eat the Truma. But we know what? We know that the Kohanim, when they become Tameh, they only start eating Truma only from the evening. And they don't really have to wait till the next day. So from there, clearly you see, if you're telling me from when do I have to recite the Shema in the evening, that's when the Kohanim enter to eat their Truma. And the Kohanim, when they're Tameh, and when they enter to eat their Truma, it had to be when the stars come out. So, why did the Chachamim use this Baraita and not our Mishnah? V'tiris behalichot olam, sha'ar sheni perek bet ot yudchet, shebnei Eretz Yisrael he'idifu livshot et asavag me'abaraita. He says that the Chachamim in the land of Israel, they preferred to answer their suffix from the Baraita. You're right, you could have learned it from the Mishnah. You're right. So why didn't they? They preferred the Baraita. Why did they prefer the Baraita? Mishum shemifursh bayoter, because it's explained openly there. Shehal kohanim ochlim b'tzetz kochavim, because it says very clearly that the kohanim eat at tzetz kochavim. In our Mishnah, yes, you're right. You're right. In our Mishnah, when it says memotai kohanim yeshma ba'aravim mish'asha kohanim nechtzil betrumatan, you're right. It's tzetz kochavim. But they wanted to have a clearer, they wanted to have a more open language where it says clearly Tzetz Kochavim. So that's why they went with the Braita, even though we always prefer Mishnah over Braita, but the Braita says it openly, so that's why they chose the Braita over the Mishnah. Rabbatai, he says over here, he says, look, right, there's a lot of more ways how you can go ahead and actually explain this. But Rabbatai, I want to stick to Rashi. In any event, I want to really stick to Rashi. It's just I don't want to get thrown here and there. But we see from over here what? Why did the Chachamim from the West, the way Rashi wants to learn it, why did the Chachamim from the West decide to learn from this Braita, where they could have easily learned it out from our Mishnah, and it's always better to learn it from Mishnah than a Braita. So the Halichot Ulam answers that the reason why they chose the Braita, because it's clear, the language is clear, it means Mamash Tzetz Kochavim. You don't have to sit there and guess when the Kohanim entered to eat. You're right, it's Tzetz Kochavim. But it's not openly written. They prefer, they mean the same thing. But, they prefer the Braita because it says clearly, similar davar, Tzetz Kochavim. A sign to this is Tzetz Kochavim. In any event, I hope you guys liked it because of that question. I mean, you guys, it should have popped up in your mind also, but it was nuts because when I finished the recording and it was Erev Shabbat, I'm like, wait a minute, and now it's Shabbat and I couldn't get back into it. Rabotai, I put it to you like this. If I have a question that's bothering me, if I don't understand something, I can continue doing something else. It's very hard to function when you don't have an answer to something. In any event, I'm happy I was able to see it. Believe it or not, I looked up over here, I looked up other places. Baruch Hashem, actually this was the last place I looked in the Masifta. I looked other places first, and then, I try to listen here, try to listen there, try to get something going. But then on the Friday night, on Shabbat night, they say you should learn Torah on Shabbat night because it opens up your mind, you can have more answers. I was just sitting, and it hit me. Why? Literally hit me, but I didn't want to say it. I was afraid to say it until I actually see somebody else write it. So I'm very happy I was able to find it in Masifta because for me it was so obvious. Like, this is Tzetz Kochavim, that's Tzetz Kochavim. Why are you using the Braita over the Mishnah? Yeah, it's Tzetz Kochavim, but still Mishnah is better. All right, the Chachamim in the West, they wanted to go ahead with the Braita more than the Mishnah because it's more openly written than the Mishnah. Beautiful. Okay. Rabotai, let's start a new piece. Now I'm going to tell like this. I'm going to say you have to brace yourself for impact. This Daf Bet Amud Bet is an unbelievable page, only because there's many opinions of it that go back and forth on the same from when does one recite the Shema in the evening, and that's what we're going to try to see. Today we're going to do one section of it, and believe me, tomorrow we'll follow through. But you have to understand this Daf Bet Amud Bet, I'm not going to say it's hard. Nothing is hard with Rashi. But it's going to require maybe some writing. I might have to actually write down maybe, and I'll show you how it works, the opinions and so back and forth, and we'll see it, Rabotai. We'll see it. It was very funny because there was a whole group that they started Masecht Berachot. Now, when I used to do Gemara like this, Masecht Berachot, to understand this piece, it takes hours, Rabotai. It doesn't. I could be teaching it in 20 minutes. Baruch Hashem B'lein Hara had the zechut to do it a few times, but I could be teaching it at a very fast pace. But don't think that's the way it's supposed to be. It's not supposed to be that way. I don't want to lie to you, but I'll tell you the truth. When I first opened up the Gemara, Masecht Berachot Daf Bet Amud Aleph, I remember one time, I'm talking about maybe more than 25 years now. A very long time back, but I remember one time sitting, maybe 22 years. I don't want to. Okay, I don't know how. Okay, whatever. I'm talking about around that period, and I remember locking up myself in the room one time. It was a Sunday, and I said to myself, I just have to do one Amud. Let me just get something going. I don't know. I'm gonna sit there and figure it out. I'm not gonna exaggerate. I think it took me to do one Amud, not the Daf. One Amud, one side. I think it took me. I think I had every little Rashi word written. Gemara, everything was written. I was using the art scroll. And I was listening to other Rebbeim also trying to understand it. And I think it took me no less than 6 to 8 hours to do one Amud. I mean, I was sitting, and one word I couldn't figure it out, and I had to ask this rabbi. The rabbi tells me, I don't know. This rabbi says, Machlok. It's Machlok on what? Tell me the word. I'll tell you what the word was. It was Mikame. Let me see right over here. In Dibra Matchil, where it says, Atzov HaShemona Rishona, in the middle, if you see over there, it says, Umikame HaKadami Lav Sman Shchiva. Umikame literally means, and before this, it's also not a time of lying down. So this word threw me off because I really couldn't find it. So I went to one rabbi, I went to another rabbi. Nobody was able to help me. You know who helped me, Rabotai? I was by Rabbi Friedman's shul on Main Street, the corner shul on Main Street next to Rabbi Chaimov. And I asked Rabbi Friedman, I was afraid, I'm just beginning to learn. I'm like, Rabbi, what does Umekame mean? Nobody's able to help me. Can you please help me? So what's the problem? It means, and before. I'm like, that's all? Yeah, it was nuts. Anyway, but I'm just trying to say, don't think just because we do over here the Gemara at this quick pace, and even though I'm explaining the Baruch Hashem and how I try to, give it my all to make sure everybody understands this clearly, still, Rabotai, with all this, you have to do Chazarot. Chazarot, I can't tell you how important it is just to review and review and review. The more review, the more fluent you're going to become with the vocabulary. The more you're going to get this the more you're going to get the hang of the system of how to learn Gemara. And that's when it's going to become easy. I'm telling you, Rabotai, once you get the Gemara, Rashi, Bezrat, Shem, B'Neder, you'll see Tosfot is not going to become hard. Rishonim are not going to become hard. Even though you have to think a lot in Tosfot, no problem. Think you can think. But at least you'll know the words. At least you know the context. At least you know, you have to put things together. It's not just defining and that's it. I know it. Even with definition, you still have to understand what the Gemara is speaking about. In any event, someone would say that people shouldn't get discouraged when they're learning Gemara, especially when you're learning Gemara, Rabotai, for the first time. Don't get discouraged. It's okay. If you feel down, if you feel like, wow, he's getting like that, believe me, Rabotai, it took time. I don't want to tell you every single daf wouldn't take less than 4 or 5 hours. Every single daf. And I used to do with all daf, and that daf, and this daf. I used to listen to Rabbi Grossman, and that rabbi, and this rabbi, just to be able to get a hang of it. Rabotai, Baruch Hashem, B'lei Anhara, I met Rabbi Walken. He showed me a way. I stuck with him. I learned by him. And that was the secret. I think that's what the rabbi said. That, when you learn from too many people, it's nice, you can learn from whoever you want. But you'll never, because one is going to explain like this, according to the Riv, the Rambam, the Rosh, Tosfot, Rashi. But when you stick with one rabbi, he says, you're able to at least learn that derech. At least you could go with that derech, at least you know now how to learn. But if you go like this one day, like this one day, like this one day, like this one day, you're really not going to get it. And that's Rabotai, and that is the secret. And that is the secret when it comes to learning. You stick to one way of learning, and that's how you're going to follow. Until you get more fluent in it and so on and so forth, then you can do whatever you want. Bezrat Hashem, B'Neder. Okay. Rabotai, so brace yourself. This piece is not so hard, but we'll get there, B'Neder. Remember, I hold like this. Whenever we have Rashi, with Rashi it's never hard. If you have no Rashi, I give out, Rabotai. If anybody ever did Masecht Shekalim, there's no Rashi on it. Go ahead, try to do it. Try to do Masecht Shekalim, and let me know how it comes out. They have Korban Ha'eda, they have this opinion, that opinion. There's no Rashi, Rabotai, it's not easy. Okay. Everything is doable, it just requires much more work. Fine. Amar Mar, the master said, again, Rabotai, if you pay close attention, we're about 11 lines from the top. It says, Amar Mar, the master said. Again, so we already discussed this point, but we're going to go back and attack this point. The first time when we said Amar Mar, if you guys remember in Daf Bet Amur Aleph, we spoke about over there, Amar Mar, Mish'asha Kohanim Nichnasin L'chol B'Tur Matan. And we said why it needed to teach us when the Kohanim entered the Truma, because they wanted to teach us the Chiddush of that the Kapar doesn't hold them back, but the sun setting does hold them back. Now we're going to go through a whole different point, but again, we're going to dissect that same line, but through a different point. Amar Mar, the master said, Misha'asha Kohanim Nichnasim L'chol B'Tur Matan. From the time the Kohanim entered the Truma, again, you have to remember, this is going back to our Mishnah, so in your mind, you already have to know the Mishnah. Very simple. I think by now you guys probably have it by heart. That's a given. That's what you have to know when he says Amar Mar. Fine. The Gemara brings a challenge. The Gemara says, Uri minhu, I'll bring you a challenge. Another teaching. From when does one recite the Shema in the evening? Comes the Gemara says, Meshaha'oni nichnas le'echol pito b'melech. When the poor person enters to eat his bread with salt. If you look carefully by where it says pito b'melech, if you see over there, there's a small aleph. I want to show you something. If you look to Mesoret Hashas, Imo Sofot, it's to your, it's basically to my left. It's right over here. Ot Aleph. Why am I telling this? A lot of times, if you ever get stuck in Gemara, you want to go to that Indian over there. So it says Ayin Tosefet, Avodah Zara, Daf Ayin Vav, Amud Aleph, Dibra Malchil, Bat Yoma, etc. You're going to look in the Tosefet. So what comes out of here, that if you don't understand what the case is, go look over there. Rabotai, my Gemara won't have it, but usually others Gemara, they have the Tosefet in the back. My Gemara is very small, right? Because it's with the Nikudot, so it's very small. But the original Gemaras, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they have it in the back, the Toseftos. In any event, he says, if you look in the Tosefet, no, this is, by the way, it's not, oh, this is easy. I'm sorry, 1 second. Ein Tosfot. I apologize, not Tosefet. Tosefet. I apologize, Rabotai. The Tosefta is Odbet. Let me go back. Just leave the Tosefta out for now. I apologize. Ein Tosfot Avodah Zarah. Okay, right here. I apologize. I went 1 second. In Ot Aleph, it's not Tosefta. I was reading the Odbet. Ein Tosfot Avodah Zarah Daf Ein Vav Amur Aleph. Diba Matchil, the beginning of the words, Bat Yomo. So, if you're going to go to Masecht Avodah Zarah, if you're going to open up to page 76, side 1, you're going to get the words Dibra Matchil, the beginning of the words, in Tosfot over there, Bat Yoma, you'll see this Machloket over there. So that's if you, I'm just teaching you how you have to navigate the Gemara. If you ever get stuck, don't think it's something wrong with you. No, it's okay. It's alright. Open the Gemara there, you'll see clearly how the Gemara is explained. Bam, you got your answer. It becomes easy. Already it's not so difficult, Rabotai. So the Gemara says, Amar, the master said, from the time the Kohenim entered to the Truma, Uriminu, the Gemara brings a challenge. Me'motai Korin es Shema be'arevin. Uriminu little means they're asking a question. I just say a challenge or an attack, but Uriminu literally means when they're asking a question. Uriminu, and the Gemara brings a challenge. Me'motai Korin es Shema be'arevin. Another teaching says, from when does one recite the Shema in the evening? Meshaha'oni nichnas lechol pitu b'melech. When the poor person enters to eat his bread with salt. Now, pay close attention. Again, the word ad. We had over here ad, when it says, Me'motai Korin Shema be'arevin, Mesha'asha Kohen nechzil chol bitrumatan, ad sova hashmona rishona divrei Rabbi Eliezer. Until the end of the first watch, these are the words of Rabbi Eliezer. Again, over here also we have the same concept. Mesha'ani nichnas lechol pitu b'melech, ad sha'a shomed lipater mitoch sudato. Ad, until the moment or the hour that he gets up, lipater, to exempt himself, mitoch sudato, meaning to take leave from his meal. Now, understand this Gemara, it has two things. The Gemara is saying like this. From when does one begin to recite the Shema in the evening? The Gemara says from the time the Kohen enters to eat his bread with salt, until when does he eat the bread with salt? I'm sorry, one more time. From when can one recite the Krishma in the evening? From the time the Kohen enters to eat the bread with salt, until when can one recite the Shema in the evening? So we have over 2 times. Until the moment or the hour that he gets up to take leave from his meal. Now you have over here 2 things. From when does one begin to recite the Kriya Shema in the evening? That's when the Kohen enters to eat his bread with salt. We'll take a look at Rashi right now. But until when can you recite that Shema? Until when the Kohen gets up from his meal. Now, let's look into Rashi. Rashi says, Mishaha'oni, in Dibra Matchil Mishaha'oni, She'en lo ner lahadlik b'su'udato. He does not have a candle to light for his meal. Meaning, right, a poor person, lo leini chas v'shalom, he uses more the light of the day than a candle to be able to eat his meal. So Rashi says, Mishaha'oni, when the Oni enters to eat his bread meal, meaning his bread with salt. So Rashi tells you, why we're looking at that time? Because because he does not have a candle to light for his meal. So what is he going to end up doing? He's going to have to use the little light that is outside to be able to consume his meal. Continues Rashi. Rashi says, oh, there's no Rashi. That's it. So right now we know like this. When it says from the time when the Kohen enter to eat the Truma, the Gemara brings a challenge. Now the Gemara is going to attack, but the question is, from where is the Gemara going to attack? Is the Gemara going to attack from the Reisha, or is the Gemara going to attack from the Seifa? Now what do I mean, Rabotai? Watch this. Let me see something. Now this is very important to know. Whenever you learn Gemara in any given Mishnah, you have a Reisha, you have a Mitziata, you have a Seifa, you have the beginning, you have the middle, and you have the end. A lot of times, Rabotai, sometimes even in the middle can also be called the end, but let's not get into that right now. But I just want to show you something over here. We asked the question, from when can one recite the Shema in the evening? So we said when the poor person enters to eat his bread with salt. And Rashi explained, why does he have to enter at that time to eat his bread with salt? Why doesn't he do it at a later time? Because he does not have a candle to light for the meal, because he's poor, so that's why he's going to have to use the little light that's left over before it really gets dark, so he could be able to see what he's eating. Continues the Gemara. The Gemara says ad, until, which is a very important word, until he takes leave from the meal. Alright, so watch this. The poor person, from basically what's going on over here, from when does one recite the Kriya Shema in the evening? From the time the poor person enters to eat the bread with salt. And until when can you do it? Until he takes leave from the meal. Now, why am I saying this? Rabotai, you can have such a thing that's called a ratio. Ratio means the beginning. This is the beginning of the teaching. This is the end of the teaching. This whole statement is the end. This whole statement is the beginning. So that's what we want to see right now, Rabotai. We're going to see the Gemara is going to ask these questions. Reisha, Seifa. Also, if you look into our Mishnah, when it says Me'amotai Kohen Shema Ba'aramin, Mishasha Kohen Nechzil Betrumatan, that's going to be the Reisha. Atzov Hashmor Harishon, the Rabbi Lezer, Chamim Omrim, Ad Chatzon, Rabbi Gamliel Omer, Asher Lev Shachar. Each one can be a Seifa unto its own. Okay? So, Rabotai, let's do this right now. Let's go back into the Gemara. One more time, Rabotai. Once when we learn, remember with me, I only like to go back and only to make, it should be in sync, it should be intact. The wording should be perfect. You shouldn't get lost. Once you do Rashi, always go back to start from the beginning. Amar, the master said, Misha'asha Kohanim Nechitziluch Betrumatan, from the time the Kohanim entered to the Truma. That was our Mishnah Daf Bet Amud Aleph. Or the Gemara brings a contradiction. Do you want, we'll see what the contradiction is. Me'emotai korin es shema be'arabim. From when does one recite the Kriya Shema in the evening? Misha'ani nichnas l'chol pitu b'melech. From when the poor person enters to eat his bread with salt. And until when can you recite the Shema in the evening? Until the hour, or until the time when the poor person gets up to take leave from his meal. Now the Gemara is going to ask the challenged question on our Mishnah. The Gemara says, 1 second. Seifa vadai pligi amatnitin. The end of the teaching for sure argues on our Mishnah. Rabotai, understand this clearly. Seifa vadai pligi amatnitin. The end of the teaching for sure argues on our Mishnah. Reisha, but the beginning, mi lema, are we going to say? Over here, mi doesn't mean who. It means like haim, like are we? Like it's a question format. Reisha mi lema. In the beginning, are we going to say pliga matita? Are we going to say that the beginning is arguing on our Mishnah? That is the question. Now, Rabotai, we have to understand something very important over here. Before I continue to explain, or even read the Rashi, do you guys understand what's going on? Can you try to figure out what does it mean that Seifa Vade Pliga Matnitin, but the Reisha mi lema, but the Reisha, are we going to say that it argues on the Mishnah or not? Can you try to figure out the machloket before I continue? It is very, very important that you try to figure out that. Because you have to work your brain, Rabotai. Don't just sit and listen. You want to work your brain. What does it mean, Seifa Vade Pliga Matnitin? The end for sure argues in our Mishnah. But the beginning, are we going to say does it argue on the Mishnah or not? That is the question. Okay. Alright, Rabbi, you can put me on pause. Let me continue now. But try to really figure it out, and I want to show you something. The Gemara is saying like this. 1 second, Rabbi, give me 1 second. Okay, sorry about that. I had to close the kitchen door. In any event, Rabotai, I am in the basement in my house, by the way. So, what's going to happen? Rabotai, look at this. So look at this carefully. The Gemara is saying, Seifa vadai pligya matnitin. Reisha milema pligya matnitin. Now remember, what did I tell you before? This is the Reisha. Let's do like this. Where's my marker? Let's do like this. I'm going to write right here. Let's see. Okay, here we go. So let me leave it like this. Rabotai, we have over here Reisha and Seifa. So the Gemara is asking a question. The Gemara is making a statement and then asking a question. Seifa vadai pligya matnitin. The end of this teaching for sure argues on our Mishnah. Now I want to just tell you before we do the Rashi. Can you understand why? In our Mishnah it says Me'motai kurin eshma be'aravin Misha'asha konim nichnesin l'chob bitrumatan. Stop. Until when can you read it? Ad sov ha'shmona rishona divrei Rabbi Eliezer. V'chachamim omrim ad chatzov Ram Gamliel omer ad she'alem od hashachar. You have three opinions. The most stringent one of them is Rabbi Eliezer that says until the end of the first watch, which is basically 4 hours into the night. And over here, 1 second, over here, until when are you able to read it? When are you able to read the evening Shema from this teaching? When he takes leave from the meal. When he takes leave from the meal, when is that? Rabotai, it's not 4 hours into the night. This is the beginning of the night where he could no longer already see his food. So that's why the Gemara is telling you, Seifa, the end of this teaching, for sure argues on the Mishnah, on the end of our Mishnah. Because over there we give you up until the end, according to Rabbi Eliezer, up until the end of the first watch, according to Chachamim until Chatzot, according to Ram Gamliel until Amud Shachar. That's beautiful, but over here, Mamish, he begins to eat, and then he has to stop sometime right after that when it's dark. And this is nowhere close to not one of our opinions in the Mishnah. So over there, that's what you can understand now. That's what it means. Seifa, vadei pligya matnitin. Reisha, but the beginning, milema, are we going to say over here, when the poor person enters to eat the bread with the salt, is it the same time when the Kohen enters to eat the truma? That is the question that the Gemara is asking. Now let's try to see that in Rashi. Okay. The Gemara says, the end of the Mishnah, meaning over here, the end of the teaching over here, for sure argues on the end of our Mishnah over there, in Daf Bet Amud Aleph. Why? He explains, Rashi explains, the Katani Hacha, because it was taught over here, Ad Rabotai, look, if you're using this Gemara, pay attention to the quotes that they put on top to make it easier. The Gemara says, Ad sha'ash she'omed lipater mitoch hasuda. Until the time you get up, until the time the poor person gets up to take leave from his meal. But look what he says. That's the way the Mishnah explains over here. And that is, look Rabbi Eliezer. And that cannot be like Rabbi Eliezer, because he held until the end of the first watch. Look Rabban, it cannot be like the Chachamim, because they hold until Chatzot. Look Ram Gamliel, that cannot be like Ram Gamliel, because he holds until dawn. We ask us, so you have to ask yourself a question. How is this Tana over here, or might be even the Tana Kama probably, how is he learning, how is he defining the word Ubishabacha? How is he defining it? So he says, the Rashi tells you right away, the Tana of our Mishnah, meaning the Tana of this teaching over here, the Darish, he expounds Ubishabacha, the word Ubishabacha, Tichilat Zman Shchiva. That is the beginning time when people go to sleep. Ubimatnitin Tanam, but in our Mishnah was taught the most stringent opinion, Ubimatnitin Tanan, and the Mishnah, in our Mishnah it was taught Ad Sov Ha'ashmora Harishona, until the end of the first watch. Because Rabbi Eliezer learns Ubishavcha means you have up until the end of the first watch. People still are going to sleep in the first 4 hours of the night. Rabbi Gamliel says, no, people are still going to sleep the whole night. Yeah, maybe majority of people go to sleep during the first half of the night, doesn't matter. But people still go to sleep later towards even the second night, even right before Amud Shach, they still go to sleep. That's why night was created, for people to go to sleep. So Rabbi Gamliel learns up until dawn. And we saw the Chachamim agree with Rabbi Gamliel that really B'Shabbacha means you have until dawn, that people go to sleep the whole night. So why did he say Ad Chatzot? Only to distance people from the Avera, that people shouldn't forget Shema like we explained before. Now Rabotai, when you see this over here, the Rashi, so you see clearly the Rashi is telling you for sure, he's explaining the Gemara, when the Gemara says Vadai, Seva Vadai Plika Matnitin, Rashi explained to you how. Because the Tan over here, that's speaking, when I say Tana, the teacher over here that's speaking, what is he telling you over here, Rabotai? He's learning the word Ubeshabacha to mean the beginning time when people lie down. And that's what brought you the case of the poor person. Because when a person enters to eat the bread with salt, there's still light a little bit outside. But when he gets up, there's no more light. And that's when people start going to sleep, because there's no more light. What are you going to do? So that's why the Gemara says, Seifa Vadai Pligya Amatnitin. The end of this teaching for sure argues on our Mishnah. But the Gemara asks, but the beginning, are we going to say that it argues on our Mishnah? So before we answer that question, I want to go over the Rashi one more time. Just to make sure people have it, just let me go over it one more time. The end of this teaching over here for sure argues on our Mishnah. Because it was taught over here, until the time where the poor person gets up to take leave from his meal. And this cannot be like Rabbi Eliezer, it cannot be like Rabbanan, and it cannot be like Rabbi Gamliel. So the question is, why is our Tana learning the way he's learning? Why is he bringing this whole poor case of this poor guy eating the bread with salt and getting up from his meal? That's the time up to when you have to be able to say the Shema. Very simple, Rashi says. The Darish, because he expounds Ubishabacha, when it says when you lie down in the Torah, Techilas Man Shchiva. He wants to learn when it says Ubishabacha, that means that's the beginning time when people lie down to eat. Not to eat, Mechilam. Techilas Man Shchiva, that is the beginning time when people lie down to sleep. So according to this town over here, a person doesn't have a lot of time to recite Shema. According to Rabbi Eliezer, like we were explaining before, at least you have until 10 p.m. According to him, if Tzedek Chacham is at 6 o'clock where it's still light, it's still a little bit light outside, but let's say the next 10 minutes, let's just say the next 10 minutes, it gets dark. According to the way this Tana wants to explain it, he says after 6:10, you lost the mitzvah of Kriya Shema. That's the way he wants to learn it. According to Rabbi Eliezer, he says, no, you have up to the 4th hour of the day, of the night, until the end of the first watch. Which means after that time, you lost it. According to Chacham and Rabbi Eliezer, according to Chacham and Rabbi Gamliel, they'll say, no, you have all the way up to Amud Shachar. Only if after Amud Shachar you didn't do it, then you lost it. Rabotai, so you guys see how everything goes into its own category. So that's why he says, the Darish Ubishabacha Techilas Man Shchiva. Because he wanted to learn the word Ubishabacha means the beginning time when people lie down. That's what makes sense why he's bringing a case of poor people eating, because if they don't have a candle and they're only relying on the light, that there's still the light that's left, even when the stars are out, how much light can you have after that? So that's what he learns. That B'Shabbacha means the beginning time people lie down, that up to then you're allowed to go ahead and say Shema. And that period is not a lot. It's not a lot of time. But he says, but in our Mishnah it was taught, until the end of the first watch, which is way before, which is way after the time when people lie down to sleep. According to the Tan over here, is telling you Tichilas Mashchiv, that's beginning time when people go to sleep. According to our case, Rabbi Eliezer, right? Rabbi Eliezer, 1 second. Yes, according to our case, Rabbi Eliezer, what does he hold? Until the end of the first watch. We're just going to stick with one opinion right now. because you could say the Chamim and Rabbi Gamliel, but he's the most stringent opinion. Rabbi Eliezer says until the end of the first wajah of that time. So if he doesn't go hand in hand with Rabbi Eliezer, for sure he's not going to go hand in hand with Chachamim, and for sure he's not going to go hand in hand with Rabbi Gamliel. So that's what Rabotai. Let's do the Gemara one more time, and we're going to conclude with this, with the answer. Amar Mar, the master said, we said in the Mishnah, from the time the Kohen entered to either Truma, that's what we wanted to learn. From when do people recite the Krishma in the evening? From when the Kohen entered to either Truma. Uriminu, the Gemara brings a challenge. Memotai Kohen is Shema Barim. We have another teaching where it says clearly, from when does one begin to recite the Shema in the evening? When the poor person enters to eat his bread with salt, from the time that he gets up to take leave from his meal, from that period, from once the poor person eats his bread with salt, that period, until he gets up, from then till then, you have that time to be able to eat Shema. Like I explained, let's say from 6 p.m. till 6:10. That very little time. After that, according to the Tana, you lost the mitzvah of Kriyat Shema. Continues the Gemara says, Seifa Vadai Peligia Amatnitin. The end of this teaching for sure argues on the end of our Mishnah, like it was explained. Since the time of year learns Ubishavcha means Zman Shchiva, Tichila Zman Shchiva, the beginning time when people lie down, and Rabbi Eliezer holds Ad Sov Hashmana Rishona, Rabotai, they're nowhere close. So we see clearly that's simple that they argue on each other. Beautiful. That's the safe ratio, but now here's the question. So, ratio milema pligi amatnitin. Are we going to say that the beginning of this teaching argues on our Mishnah? Yes or no? Comes the Gemara and the Gemara says, Lo. The Gemara says no. Ani v'kohen chad shi'urhu. The Gemara right now wants to learn that the poor person, when he enters to eat the bread with the salt, and the Kohen, when he is tameh, when he goes to the mikvah before sunset, and then when he has to dip and eat his truma, they want to learn that their shiur is one and identical. Their time is one and identical. Now, if you look into Rashi, Rashi says, Ani v'kohen, Ani kol lelotav, the poor person, all the nights that he eats bread. Rabotai, we'll see B'lineder later on, it cannot be Shabbat because, right, Rabotai, cannot be Shabbat, we'll see later on, B'ezrat Hashem. But then he says, but again, just learn like the Rashi wants to learn right now, all nights, keep it all nights. Oni v'kohen, oni kol lelotav, a poor person, all his nights, v'kohen tameh, and a kohen who's tameh, lechol b'truma, when he enters to either truma, chad shi'urhu, it's one time measurement, which is what? Tzetz ha'kochavim. When the poor person enters to eat the bread with the salt, it's tzetz ha'kochavim. When a kohen who's tameh, when he enters to eat the truma, it's tzetz ha'kochavim. So that's what we ask. We ask the question: are we going to say that the beginning of our Mishnah are we going to say that the beginning of this teaching argues on our Mishnah right over here? Are we going to say that Rashi argue on our Mishnah in Daf Bet Amud Aleph? The Gemara says no. Ani v'kohen, and Rashi explained ani when he eats his bread meal, meaning the bread and the salt, all the night, and the kohen who's tameh when he enters to eat the truma. Chad shi'urhu, it's one time for both of them, which is tzetz ha'kochavim. Rabotai, we're going to conclude right over here, and B'ezrat Hashem B'lineder, we're going to begin in the following day with another contradiction on this. We're going to try to disprove maybe it's not so true that Oni v'kohen is the same time. Have a great day. Baruch Adonai Olam. Amen ve'amen.